right, hey everyone, welcome to Softcast. This is your host, Sergeant Major Matt Parrish, and I'm excited to have another great episode here in Season 4. You know, transition's a topic that comes up quite a bit. It's not something that most of us think of during the time that we're, joining or the time that we're running hard on a team across the soft enterprise. But it is something that comes up, and once you sort of enter that process, there's a lot of individual responsibility. There's a lot of, murkiness to what are we going to do as we step out of this life and go into the next sort of non-military career. And so, we're lucky in the soft community. We've got a ton of great people and a ton of great organizations trying to help. And it's something that we like to highlight occasionally here on the show. So today we've got a great guest. Dan Rayburn's joining us. Dan, welcome to the show. Appreciate you joining us, buddy.
Matt, good to see you again. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start off, obviously, your background as a business guy, and then what drew you into like, hey, I want to help, SF, Special Forces guys kind of walk through this transition and help them, really do it better than what was happening prior.
Yeah, so I live a very interesting life in terms of how I got involved with SF, and just, appreciate you having me here today because you've had so many amazing warriors and soldiers on the podcast, over so many episodes. So for me to be able to come and talk about something I love doing, which is helping Green Berets as much as possible is really important to me. So I came right out of high school, went to the Air Force, nothing soft related. I didn't do anything cool. Desert Storm was kicking off when I was a senior. So I got out, went into the Air Force, did active duty, came back after a couple of years of that, did National Guard here in New York.
Yeah.
Stewart Air National Guard Base, C5 Galaxy. And I didn't have any schooling. I hated college and never went. I barely graduated high school.
Yeah.
But I loved Apple computers. I learned Apple computers. I became a certified tech with Apple, certified engineer. And back in 1995, some of the biggest companies using Macs back then were record labels.
Yeah. Wow.
So in 1995, Apple put together something in New York City called the Macintosh New York Music Festival. And it was a 5-day concert across about 20 different venues. And back then there was no video. So that's how old I am. Okay. Yeah. It was audio only, dial up, bad quality dial up. But I thought this is kind of cool. I like music and this is the future. So I left Apple. I raised $75,000 and I went out and I started a company called Live Online to start streaming live concerts. And obviously I knew all the record labels from the Apple days. So we started traveling with bands around the world, webcasting concerts back to sites like MTV, VH1, a lot of sites that aren't around anymore. But we were the guys behind the scenes making it all happen. And that's where this really kicked off for me. And then I sold that business at 24 and then started another small business like that inside a little ISP in New York City. They went public, raised $600 million in a bond offering. So then I lived the .com life, that .com bubble, which was just an absolute amazing experience. So over the last 26 years in the streaming space, I've been fortunate to really do quite a bit, being asked to testify in front of Congress and Senate. I do a lot of work on CNBC right now as an analyst.
Yeah.
But about 60% of the time I spend now is with Special Forces over the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's incredible. I know how we met. You were down here at SOCOM headquarters doing a little professional development deal, 90 minutes, 2 hours, basically walking us through, hey, this is what I've seen over the course of several years now, helping individuals. And you're a unique guy, man, because of that .com, life and everything else. You have the resources to where you don't fundraise. You're not doing this as an organization. It's really
Correct.
just, hey, I want to help these guys. And I know, I'll say this for the listeners out there. We're going to mainly talk, Special Forces transition in this episode because that's who Dan focuses on. But I think you're going to get a lot out of this if you're in one of the other, special operations tribes across SOCOM. I think you're going to get a lot of reciprocity of similar information. And as I said earlier, we're lucky to have people like Dan that are willing to invest into those of us that are going through the transition. So you start getting involved. Right.
It's slowly, but it happened very fast.
How do you get kind of like, hey, because as you say, nobody knows who we are or what we do. So I'm curious, like, how did you get that first connection?
Yeah. So it happened organically, which is the way it should happen. And, you brought up just in terms of how I set myself up here to help you guys successfully. It's a valid point. I've had the honor and privilege to probably train more than 700 or 800 of you through classes.
Yeah.
Do a lot of one-on-ones like I did with yourself after the
Yeah.
class, and get to hear what your why is.
Yeah.
And for a lot of you, it's 9/11, other things. My why is, guys who don't know me at first. I mean, I'm in all the groups now, but initially they're just like, I don't quite get this. This guy doesn't have a website. He doesn't make money. No one's paying to like bring him here. What's the deal? He's taking us out to dinner. Like, all right, what's the catch? Right. I get that. But my why is simple. And that's just, I love you guys.
Yeah.
You guys deserve the help. You guys don't get enough help. Nobody knows who Green Berets are.
Yeah.
So it started just about 5 years ago, and obviously meant to be just at the way this is accelerated. But really, I was coming out of a long divorce, or a long marriage, which unfortunately ended in divorce, and I had some free time on my hands, and really wanted to give back and do something more than just business. Money in business is not what drives me.
Yeah.
And so I met a 7th group major at dinner by chance.
Yeah.
Through somebody who was just sitting there, and he was getting out soon, and he was really looking for some help in the business world. And I said, I could certainly guide you here. I've got resources. I've got connections. I'm fortunate to currently consult and to have consulted to some of the largest companies in the world, broadcast companies, cloud providers, sports leagues, streaming services. So I can make a call into a CEO, CTO, and put you in touch directly with them. That's what a lot of you guys need that you're not getting in a lot of the other orgs out there is the actual relationships that have been built. So I helped this GB out, and he got out. And then one day he called and he said, I've got a 7th group captain who really needs a job. He's getting out soon. He's got a baby on the way. So brought him up to New York, met him, walked him into, at the time it was called BAMTech, which is Major League Baseball Advanced Media. It's now called Disney Streaming Services. Disney acquired it. And just walked him into there, and they're like, all right, we'll hire you. And he's like, well, I'm still down a group at 7th. What do I do? And I was like, well, you're moving in with me now.
Yeah.
So since I live north of the city, he could just take the train in every day. So he lived with me for probably 4 to 5 months.
Wow.
And you learn a lot naturally when someone lives with you, let alone somebody who has the background that you all do. So that was kind of the first entry, but I really got to give credit to Anthony Durek, who is the senior Bravo and 0226 at 10th, because I was sending them care packages in 2017 when they were in Afghanistan, whatever those guys wanted, no questions asked. I'd met him through an email. Someone else recommended, said they could use some help. And then we traded emails for months in that whole deployment. And then he reached out and said, my senior Charlie's been shot, and we're going to go back to Walter Reed. Could you, help him out, the kids, the family? So I just went, got them what they needed, met up with about half of the team, met them, hung out with them for the weekend. And Tony invited me up to 10th group to the team room just to meet the other guys.
Yeah. And
then while I was there, guys started asking questions like, I looked you up online. Like, how'd you do all this stuff? And then so it just rolled, and
yeah, that's awesome.
Little by little, it grew. And then guys at Walter Reed would pass my name on to the next guy that came in.
Yeah.
So the flexibility of being able to, I say the greatest life you can have is when you can wake up every day and decide where to spend your time and where to spend your money.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. The flexibility I fortunately have, is to spend it with you all. But from there, it just grew. I can't even explain just organically how it grew from meeting teams. And then it was like the team would say, hey, could you put on a little class while you're here? And then you meet the sergeant major, the company. And then it's like, well, can we open it up to the whole company? And then it continued to grow. And then was introduced to some more people. And then nicely got to meet Colonel Stuart Ferris.
Yeah.
And then he expanded my reach, and then just kept growing. And then next thing you knew, I was going to 7th group quite frequently. And then I nicely met General Mulholland at his house, and then he called down to 5th and was like, you got to have this guy here. And so I wake up every day and just really kind of shake my head, just saying, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Because I am not a Green Beret. And yet the amount of guys and teams and groups that treat me as one of your own when I'm not is completely overwhelming at times, and extremely humbling. And I've had over 20 GBs at my house. I've had guys live with me 4 to 6 months, sometimes their wives and kids.
Yeah.
So you're embedded at that degree, and you go to a lot of places with the guys and see training, and you see what comes with the difficult job you all do on the side of marriages and family,
Yeah,
and obviously
absolutely.
I deal with some of the mental aspects of it as well. It's a rough life, and if Americans knew more of what you all did and what you all sacrificed, frankly, I think you would get more help.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, man. When I was kind of introduced to you and started hearing the story, like I said, we probably on the other side, as humbling as it is for you, it's humbling for us to think, hey, we've got this guy who's been super successful in tech and is willing to give his time, give his talent, give his his treasure to helping us out. And I know you and I talked as I'm the POTUF guy. We talked a little bit about how you being that relief valve as well of someone from outside who people can kind of confide in, because now you've gotten sort of embedded in our community and you understand some of the deal. So some of those things with mental health and some of the family things, like it helps sometimes to have somebody that's even outside of kind of the chain of command and everything else. Guys are more interested in opening up sometimes to someone that they know it's not going to circle back
Right.
to their leadership or something like that. So
That
yeah.
was a part I didn't realize, obviously,
Yeah.
in the beginning that came with it. Because there
Yeah.
are some days you talk to, sometimes my entire day consists of just calling and talking to 10 or 12 guys,
Yeah.
knowing guy has a surgery coming up, something's going on at home. And it's, yeah, there is obviously an emotional aspect of this as well,
Sure.
which can be emotionally tiring at times. But
Yeah.
I understand that comes with the job that you have. So it's guys say to me all the time, if I tried to do all this, I just sat down and wrote down a piece of paper. I want to go from here to here, and then I want to be at seventh and fifth group, and
Yeah.
be at SOCOM one night. You couldn't even plan this, so it's just
Yeah.
organically the way it's worked. It's really the best way it should work, and the fact that I don't have to promote it, don't have a website,
Yeah.
and operate completely differently than pretty much every organization out there just gives me a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's phenomenal, man. You work with people, you get people problems, but that's a good thing as well, right? So because you're agile and because you care, you're able to shepherd some of these guys. Transition is a tough thing. You think it's like anything else. You put a lot of pressure and stress and all those things. A lot of these little underlying issues will start to manifest and be magnified a little bit. So transition is one of those times where now you're worried about economic stability, you're worried about sort of where you're going to live, how you're going to feed your family, all these things. It can start to, put pressure and friction, and having somebody there to help walk people through is huge, man. So I really, I'll say this later, thanks for coming on the show, but also just on behalf of the community, man, we really appreciate that you're willing to invest all the time and effort that you do. So let's talk, sort of from your now outside, sort of inside lens of, kind of a unique perspective of being both a business leader, but having so much knowledge of the community. Like, what do you see as the primary sort of issues to overcome as a guy's been running hard like myself? You're on a team, you're running hard, you're
Right.
doing all these things. All of a sudden you pop up and you're like, hey, it's time to transition. Like, oh crap, I hear we suck at this, because that's all anybody ever says. So now, oh man, I got to get started. Where do I get started? How do I, all those things. What's been your lens of, kind of the average, GB that's popping up ready to go?
Yeah. So as you saw in the class you went through, first, you're all different.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So the SFL TAP treats you like you're all the same, but
Yeah.
you're not. And that's why I
Yeah.
sit with all of you one-on-one after the class. What is unique about you?
Right.
What is your disability going to be? Right? What's your rating?
Yeah.
Are you married? Do you have kids? How much money do you have to make? Are you in debt? Do you have a diploma of some kind besides just high school? You have a degree from college?
Right.
Guys always think I'm going to ask them what they like. No, what I always ask, what do you not like? I want to
Yeah.
cross off the things right off the list right away we know aren't a fit. So I always say to you guys things like, don't build a bigger highway, pick a lane,
Yeah.
because GBs love go big or go home.
Yeah.
So I see guys as they tend to start to think about getting out, they have 10 ideas or 5 ideas, and that's great. But if you don't focus and narrow that down, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So my job is really, as you saw in the class, was to funnel all you guys down. And the biggest problem you have right here is the Army as a whole, as an organization, cares how successful you are when you're wearing a uniform.
Sure. Yeah.
Once you take it off, they don't.
Yeah.
Now, that is not to say individuals don't. You do have individuals out there. You have commanders like 7th Group Commander, Colonel Kevin Trujillo, right? He cares whether you're successful in or outside the uniform as a human being. You have those commanders out there. The problem is that the resources that you're given from the Army just are not real world, right? So you're lucky if they help you write a resume. And then when I do get the resume, it's like that's not what resumes look like today. all the lingo is military, right?
Yeah.
So SWIC, Safartec, SUT, like all these places, nobody knows what that means in the civilian world. So a big problem is guys don't know where to start, because when I sit with many GBs and ask them what they want to do, they say they don't know. Now, why don't you know? Because no one's even told you what's available.
Sure.
No one even starts at the top. So that is a big issue, is that the Army is not looking at your success once you get out. Also, the Army doesn't make decisions based on profitability. In the business world, we make decisions based on profit and loss, because if we don't, the company evaporates. They go under, they get outmaneuvered. The competitor comes out with a better product at a better price, better margins.
Yeah.
So we do decision-making very differently in the business world. I would say one of the biggest things that guys really need to focus on as they start to get out is understanding just what transition even means. I hate that word. As you saw in my class at SOCOM, I didn't call it transition. Yeah. And the reason for that is in the business world, and for any soft guys listening now that are getting out, if you have transitioning Green Beret, transitioning SEAL, whatever you have on LinkedIn, scrub that stuff right away. And here's why. Transitioning the business world means you haven't figured out what you want to be yet.
Yeah.
Why would an employer want to hire you if you basically are coming right out and saying to them, I don't know what I want to do or who I want to be? Yeah. Right. So you don't say transitioning. It's a terrible word. So the biggest thing I'm always trying to reinforce is know your worth. Number one, know your worth. There's too many organizations out there that have good interests or want to do well. Some of them don't have good motives. But why is it they're always offering you jobs to work in a warehouse or drive a truck? Yeah. Or, I sit with you guys and you're like, well, I'll be happy to make whatever I'm making now. Why? Well, because you've been told that's all you're worth. You're worth more than that. Yeah. So that is the point of falling back in the, the 8 RSOF attributes for Green Berets. That is the key. Those attributes that you have that other soft members have as well, those are not common in the business world. So you really need somebody to just help you understand how the business world works, business economics. You have to understand decision-making based on profit and loss. All the other things that you guys tend to worry about, those things will just shake out. Those things will work out.
Yeah. Yeah. I really liked, one of the main things that I took from, the kind of class that you gave that I got a chance to go to was you were talking about, if you got a whiteboard and take, hey, what are the top 10 things you want to have in the first, couple of years out of your transition?
Right.
Write those 10 things down and then erase the bottom 7 and just really focus on knocking out those 3, because we do get so want to do everything all the time because we're doers.
Because you do that right now and you're good at it. But I tend to find when you leave, you're not as good. Why? Because of uncertainty.
Well, you're not in the same type of situation, right? When you got structure, you're able to color all over the place because you're kind of rooted in a structure. But when it's choose your own adventure and you're trying to color everywhere, then sometimes it can get disjointed. So totally makes sense. As you're talking about, one of the things that doesn't matter if you're SF, whoever, trying to show your value or sort of translate your skills, your attributes, your values into the value that you can provide a business. What's your lens on how to sort of figure that out, root yourself to more of your value going forward, as opposed to like, hey, I was in charge of this many people, in charge of this much, this many dollars of equipment, all that kind of like rear-looking garbage, as opposed to like, hey, this is what from my skill set I can provide to your business going forward.
Yeah, so that's, as you saw, one of the number one things that we go through in the class is what we call an elevator pitch.
Sure.
Which is if you run into somebody, you need to explain in 15 to 20 seconds the value you provide to them, not what you did in the past, not to your point, how much equipment you managed.
Yeah.
The resumes I get with guys talking about chasing HVTs, even number of Title 50 missions, you can't be listing that stuff on a resume. And frankly, even if you do, you might as well just put down a foreign language, because that's what it is to civilians.
Right.
So what you have to do is you have to be able to explain these skill sets you have and how unique they are. So if I took you somewhere, Matt, and introduced you to a CTO of a company, I'd ask them, hey, have you ever met a Green Beret before? No. Well, let me tell you what these guys do. These guys have skill sets that can be practically applied in any business environment immediately. Situational awareness, empathy for their peers, problem solvers, and they love making decisions based on data. They're natural born leaders, and they can communicate clearly and effectively in cross-functional teams. Full stop. That was probably 15 seconds.
Right.
I use no Army terms at all.
Right.
Now, guys listening might be like, that sounds real easy. It can't be that easy. It is that easy, because civilians are coming in and telling employers, well, I show up on time. Right? That's the number one thing they say. And employers will be like, well, I'm hiring you. I expect you to show up on time. But they say things like, I show up on time, I'm friendly. They're not talking about the skill sets that you have in soft. They're just not. So you really have to highlight those attributes that make you unique. And that's whether you're MARSOC, your SEALs, your Air Force Special Operations Command, whoever you are.
Yeah.
In the soft umbrella, you have to highlight that. And that's your elevator pitch. And once you have your elevator pitch down, what do you do with that? Well, that goes on the top of your resume. That goes on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Now people see right away who you are and what you do. And then the other things you highlight are, okay, do you have a TSSCI? You have it with Poly? Okay, you list it. Sure. You have a degree of some kind. Now, if it's in defense studies and analysis, that's not the thing you put in the first sentence, because again, they don't know what that is. But there's a way to translate all of your skill sets, especially for the individuals that have been to the specialized schools where you're taught negotiation.
Sure.
Right. Those are things where, no, you're not going to put that school in your resume, but you are going to say something like, I went to a special school in the Army that taught me how to negotiate with others. You know how valuable that is? That's not what civilians have. They haven't been to school for negotiation. Yeah. So those are all the things that you highlight. And then you have to be able to speak intelligently and intelligibly and be confident when you speak. So as you heard me mention in the class, I cannot reinforce enough to anyone listening right now about public speaking.
Yeah.
If you can stand and speak intelligently and intelligibly, you will get a job just based off that. And I mean truly standing, speaking, not like explaining what the range calendar is for the next month, because guys will be like, oh, I do that all the time. That's not what I mean. But if you can stand and speak on what your attributes are, and how you make decision making, how you communicate, the fact you write things down, that's rare in the business world. People just roll into meetings and be like, yeah, it's in my head. Those are actually the things that get you a job.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about your lens is, like, as a successful business guy, but also still being a consultant in a lot of ways, right? Getting pulled onto CNBC and all these things to talk about your area of expertise, streaming video, all these things. You get to see what's currently happening in the industry and also try to relate it sort of real world back to us. One of the cool things that I thought that you brought up that I want to, kind of hear your lens on is how COVID's affected this. You were the first guy that you sat down and you're like, hey man, COVID is a gift for you guys. Like, obviously all the death and destruction, everything else, terrible. But as far as like as far as going forward in the business world, like you guys transitioning, COVID is a huge benefit. Talk us through, like, why is COVID? How does that help us?
I always think it's funny, right? Because after the class, everyone in the one-on-ones is like, wow, I never thought about COVID. Why would you, right? You're in your Army SF bubble. I get it, but COVID. So what is the number one thing that scares people in this world? Well, number one is public speaking, but the thing civilians don't like is change, uncertainty.
Yeah.
Your entire business is change.
Right.
That's all you do.
Yeah.
Every single day, the Army makes some new rule and then changes it the next day or whatnot. So you are comfortable with change. You have that flexibility. You have that adaptability built into you guys for who you are and what you do. In the civilian world, when COVID hit, you had many people here in America who quit their jobs because they couldn't manage working from home with their children at the same time.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy to say, but you have a lot of people who left their jobs. So employers now, as they're bringing people back into the workforce more and more, They're looking for people with what? Resiliency,
Yeah,
the ability
absolutely.
to make decisions on their own without being micromanaged, especially because so many jobs are now working from home. They can't micromanage you. They're not in the office with you.
Yeah,
So COVID, the impact of COVID for SOF is good in two ways. One, use your skill sets, showcase just how you want to be part of a team, you want to build something, how you communicate, and you can still do that even with everything that's going on in the world. That is your job. One. Second is a lot of jobs now will stay remote forever.
hmm,
Now, that said, anybody who tells you that no one is going back to the office is flat out lying
yeah,
because it depends on the industry, the vertical, depends on the company. You have some companies, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and others who have said to some employees, you must come back 2 days a week or 3 days a week. Others have said, please don't come back ever.
yeah,
Now, you're working in a skiff, right? You're not going to be working from home. So a lot of the jobs that I see GBs get and that I help place them in are in project management, operations, logistics. A lot of those jobs will stay remote for a long
yeah,
period of time, or it'll be a hybrid environment where you're in the office maybe 2 or 3 days a week. There is no right or wrong answer.
yeah,
So it all depends on what you're doing. But COVID is good because you're used to dealing with uncertainty. And there's, as I showed you in the class, there's a couple news stories that have come out since COVID's, slowed down and whatnot, where employers are so desperate to find workers that they've actually, in some cases, gotten rid of drug policies.
mm,
That's how badly they're looking for workers. And you know what? Here's the other thing you should know. They're willing to pay you more for your skills. So you're worth more than $80,000 a year driving a truck. So COVID is beneficial for soft.
yeah. That's awesome. You mentioned earlier sort of having taking guys and doing basically direct placements. Walking them into CEOs, CTOs, whether it's at a dinner, whether it's at the at a trade show, at a company headquarters, whatever. Can you talk us through a couple examples of opportunities where you've been able to take SF guys and really after understanding their why, what their value is, and everything, and matching them exactly with somebody in your network that's a great relationship that links up
Sure.
perfectly. Yeah.
There's a couple different ways to do this. So sometimes it's depending on the background, it can be extremely simple. So there was a captain from 10th group. He already had a 4-year degree in as a data scientist, basically,
Yeah.
which is the number one job in the world right now. Everyone thinks it's cyber. It's not. It's data analyst, data engineer, and data scientist. So he was getting out. He wanted to move back to New Jersey where family was. I put out one tweet simply saying, and my Twitter and LinkedIn is only for business. People follow me only for that, saying I have a very unique individual, Green Beret. Here's his skill sets, looking to move back to New Jersey, who already has a degree
Yeah.
in data. Comcast reached out right away. They're headquartered in Jersey. And that
Nice.
was a no-brainer. I think Philly, close by, but that
Yeah.
was a no-brainer. I mean, it took me writing a tweet for 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Now he ended up getting a couple other offers, so he didn't take the Comcast one. But that's all it took. Sometimes it's putting up an individual on LinkedIn.
Sure.
But majority of the time, the way it works is I also vet you guys. I don't just work with
Yeah.
anybody, right?
Sure.
And I bring them into my pipeline. So I've been fortunate over the last 20 years to put on trade shows and conferences in my industry, and I put on produce one of the largest trade shows, or maybe the largest in the world for my industry, every April in Vegas, and then every October in New York. So this past Vegas in April, I brought out 7 Green Berets, flew them out. They got a couple days there, and they got to shadow me. They got to see what a business event looks like. And at my event, you have Netflix, Disney, you've got Apple, you've got Microsoft, Google, Oracle. Think of every NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA. Think of every cloud provider, sports league, broadcasters, all there. There's a total of 52,000 attendees over 4 days. So it is really large.
Yeah.
And those guys get to go to every dinner. So now they're going and they're having dinner with companies executives they would never meet. And 2 guys got jobs from that, right? Just they met CEOs, and CEOs were really impressed with the individual and said, we're gonna find a job for these guys. We really like them. So many times it's as much as teams and guys involve me in a lot of what you do and a lot of the training, and I get to go to a lot of interesting places. I do the same back. I pull you guys into interesting business places where you can actually meet these individuals, and many times also just pull guys to New York for, a couple days for a weekend or whatnot. But what do we end up talking about? We end up talking about business or companies or where they want to move to. So it's done in a very organic way. Unlike a lot of the other orgs, I don't do events where it's like, come meet an SF soldier or something like that.
Yeah.
It's very organic.
Yeah. I know I've got a couple friends that through your connections found a great landing spot, and I think relationship business is huge, right? That's one of the biggest hurdles a lot of times as we're coming out. Is you might have a great set of relationships within the military. You got a great network. You've got a great reputation, all these things. As you step out, trying to network and not just network with other ones of you that are also transitioning at the same time. It's like, cool, man, I got this awesome network of other people that don't have jobs yet.
Right.
And we're all really solidly connected. But I need some people that are out like actually doing profit loss that I can connect with.
It was such a crazy thing when I first got involved with you guys, because I noticed that all GBAs are talking about you got to get in LinkedIn, and then some groups are having, building a LinkedIn page. And I'm like, guys, you're all connecting with one another.
Yeah.
You don't need to know more Green Berets, right? That's not the problem. The other thing is LinkedIn networking is a waste of time. Don't network, right? What should you be doing? The words you just said before, relationships, build relationships. Networking is useless. The other thing I tell you guys is everyone says it's all about who you know. That is 1000% false. And here's why. All that matters is who knows you.
Sure.
I can run around all day telling you guys, oh, I know lots of people and I can get you a job. The only thing that matters is when I call that person I know, will they pick up the phone? Will they reply to the email? Will they say, yes, I want to meet the guy? So it's all about who knows you. And relationship building is everything. Some of these companies that I'm helping place you guys in, I've been consulting to them, or sometimes directly to the CEO or president, for 15 years. So when I put one of you forth, I make no money from placing you. So it costs them nothing. They don't pay a headhunter fee. You're in my pipeline, so they know I've already pre-vetted you on top of what already makes you unique as a GB. I'm willing to train you up. I'm willing to have you stay in my house if needed to train you up even faster. I'm going to continue to provide support to you even after you get placed inside the organization. What does this company have to lose?
Yeah.
Nothing.
It's less expensive for them to go with that, and arguably a much higher percentage chance that it's going to be a solid employee and they're not going to miss on that employment. Yeah. Yeah, totally makes sense. I think, one of the things you said earlier, which is something that I've, talked about quite a bit as I've had these conversations, is everyone's different, right? And I think, we talk about how, we sort of beguile, SFL TAP and all these other things. And I get it. And, I went through TAP. It's
terrible.
It's not easy though to try to create a program that has to basically check a bunch of boxes for 2 days from everybody, from like the E3 kid who came in and is just getting out and is going back and like moving in with his parents, all the way to like this very high speed senior soft dude who's like got super high aspirations to go work at the right hand of, the CEO of Disney, right? And you're trying to find like, how do you shape all that? So I think that's one of the hardest things for a lot of people to understand, is like, there's not, I kind of relate it to this thing. Let's break that down though.
Yeah. Let's break that down, because people all the time say, look, I get, like, to your point, the Army can't help everyone in a bespoke model the way I am.
Yeah.
Part of that is accurate, but part of it is an excuse because you're not even being taught the basics, right? So let's just take any soft branch out there. All of you are trained on how to shoot, how to, clean a weapon, right? You're given the basics,
sure,
right? When you're getting out right now in whatever program, I hate to call it transition, that's being offered, you're not even learning the basics. So in my class where I started with, what are the different industries out there? You guys don't even know industries. You guys don't know the difference between what a project manager and a product manager does day to day. You don't know what average going salaries are. TAP doesn't provide you with any resume template of any kind that's worth anything. So it is not the Army's job to spoon feed you guys this stuff. I do get some
Right.
guys who it's like they expect the Army to do everything. Listen, there's a level of personal responsibility here.
That's where I was going as well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, look, I've sat with some guys for sure who I'm like, well, what's your ETS? And they're like 5 days. And I'm like, what have you started on? They're like, nothing. And I'm like, listen, how am I supposed to help you? Right? You got to help yourself. So you have to set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
But it's not the Army's job to spoon feed you. At the same time, should they be providing a lot more help than they are? Yes. What I don't like is I don't like setting false expectations.
Yeah.
I don't like when they pass you off to somebody and they're like, oh, this org's going to hire, assign a mentor to you. And then over 4 months, that mentor doesn't do anything but show you guys off to your friends drinking beers because now they know a Green Beret.
Yeah.
And yet you got into that relationship thinking they were going to help you get a job. So I see a lot of that with orgs as well, which I don't like because it naturally frustrates all of you. Mm-hmm. But the Army could certainly do a lot more explaining to you just how the business world works, how business economics works. When the Fed raises the interest rate 0.75%, none of you have any idea how that impacts your life.
Right.
Most of you don't.
Yeah.
They should, right? So they should just be teaching a business economics class like I sometimes teach, because that's how the world works. So on one hand, I understand they're trying to deal with a checkbox with a lot of different guys with different skill sets, different age, different background. But at the same time, apply the principles like you do in the military, right? You learn the foundation of being a soldier, right? Whether you're in the Air Force, Army, whatever it is, there's a foundation. The Army doesn't even teach that as you get out.
Yeah.
And actually, let's use the example I asked in class, because I do this every class. I say, okay, show of hands. How many people know that I think it's now 14 states in the U.S. that if you have 100% disability, you pay no real estate tax for life, right? How many guys in our class knew that?
Yeah. I didn't know there was 14. I knew Florida was one of them, but
I think it's now 14. I got to double check. It changes, but that's the number one thing that's going to determine where some of you move.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense. Yeah. 100%. No, and I agree. And I don't want to, the road I was going on is not necessarily let them off the hook, but also to understand that, like, I equate it to going to selection, right? If you're in the conventional military, you're in the regular Army and you want to go to selection, if you expect like the morning PT you get with your guys in your platoon at the 82nd or whatever to completely prepare you for selection, and you're the only guy that's going there, then you're probably going to have a bad time, right? Like there's a balance there. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't be good foundational things, but you also need to have that individual responsibility to, like, hey, I need to go tune up my individual weaknesses or my things that I know I'm going to need. And I think, to your point though, I do think there's a lot of misconception at the beginning of that. Like, it's hard to know your weaknesses if you don't know what's available, if you don't know what's the standard,
how it's measured.
Yeah, you don't really know even the box you're playing in. It is hard to at least get that initial scrub. And I think that's why, as you said, as every good, sort of transition kind of process that I've been to, anybody that I've talked to that knows what they're talking about, it's all about finding mentors and folks outside of the military that can open your, kind of thought process, open your aperture, let you figure out, whether it's the cups of coffee model, whether it's a specific mentor that's given to you, as long as you said, they're not just there to sort of say, hey, I do this and I want to put it on LinkedIn, then I'm a mentor. If they're actually investing in the relationship, if nothing else, it can help you do what you said earlier, which was cross things off the list. Which is a lot of what I have gotten from some of those conversations. Like,
exactly.
All right, I don't want to do that. I can tell by some of these conversations, like, okay, we'll scratch that one off.
But I think it's also, you've got to work smarter, not harder. So five soft truths, quality over quantity.
Yeah, sure.
And I see guys running around all over the place doing the coffees and breakfasts and everything. And then I ask, well, who was there? And it's like, well, it's all Wall Street. It's all finance. Well, do you like numbers? No. Are you going to get into Wall Street? No. Are you taking your Series 7? No. Yeah. What are you networking with Wall Street for? Right. Now, if you just are doing that because you want to practice presenting yourself, that's fine. But you're flying to another state. You're taking 2 or 3 days away. What are you really taking away from that?
Yeah.
So that's a problem. The other thing too is, and I didn't realize this until I really got embedded with you guys, is, and I don't place any guys in GS at all, but I didn't realize just how scary the finding a job and doing the interview process was to you guys. And it wasn't until a guy said to me one time that I took directly to the interview. I walked him into the CTO's office, said, yeah, he's going to talk to you for a little bit. I had never seen a GB scared before until I saw that. I mean, he just was absolutely frightened. And, he said afterwards he'd rather be downrange and having bullets whiz above him because he can at least control his environment.
Yeah.
So I realized how important just controlling your environment is. But what I then explained is how he can use his skill sets to control that environment in that interview.
Sure.
What do people love to do? They love to hear themselves talk.
Yeah.
So when the guy's telling you a story, don't interrupt him.
Yeah.
Let him talk. Most people don't listen to understand. They listen to reply.
Sure.
So you have these skill sets already in terms of how to read people and how to manage that situation. But I just get so disappointed when I hear someone who gets out and they call me and they're a cop, sheriff, marshal, they won a GS job and they hate it. They absolutely hate it. And they're usually not doing very well at it. And, when I ask them why they took it, and they said, because it was the easy button, right? I know GS. I know how to translate that. And I don't fault any guy for that because I obviously don't know what that's like to have to make that transition, but you are worth more than that. And you don't have, that's the other thing is you don't have to have a master's degree to get a job. I see all you guys running around telling each other you got to get a master's degree.
Yeah.
Almost every job out there, you don't need one.
No, I'm with you. I think, two of the most important things, identity and purpose, right? So, one of the things that we talk a lot about as far as the mental side of, all the way across your career, but really as it pertains to sort of that end of your career is really finding your identity outside of just being a Green Beret or being the sniper on the team or whatever, because that's a finite thing. It's going to go away, right?
That's right.
Like if that's your entire identity, that's where we have folks that struggle. And some guys, if that's their entire identity, but they make a transition to something that they find really meaningful and they've got a lot of purpose to, they can make that transition. But we see a lot of folks that they're wrapped up in what's sort of, their reputation on a team, who they are, kind of what their name brings them around the hallways. And then as they move out, if they don't find something that's got purpose and equal kind of value to fulfill them, it can be a big deal. So both, a little bit of your thoughts on both not finding your identity sort of in your stuff, but also how do we find something that's really purposeful and meaningful stepping out? What are your thoughts?
Great questions. And I have in one of my slides the saying, there's who you are and there's what you do.
Right.
Being a Green Beret doesn't define you. Right? So what defines you is those skill sets you have as a Green Beret, what it took for you to get to where you are. The thing I see where guys struggle is they don't realize that they can be part of a team outside of the teams. Now, the brotherhood that you guys have, I'm not going to pretend to understand that 100% because I'm not a GB. But the little bit I do understand from the privilege and opportunity to be embedded with you guys, like I have been, there's nothing like that out there. It just doesn't exist in this world. However, that doesn't mean you can't be part of a group of people who think like-minded, who want to accomplish missions in the civilian world, who actually take pride and integrity in how they do their job.
Yeah.
There are those out there. You can find them. So you have to realize that those that tend to struggle, to your point, kind of, I call it having 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
Yeah.
They have to leave that lifestyle. Now, it doesn't mean you're leaving your friends. It doesn't mean you're leaving the relationships you've made. And some guys tend to think of it that way. But it's not like that. But you can find other companies out there. Now, I also get a lot of guys adding on to your point of like, okay, well, I want to go to a company that has the same integrity I have or the same values, or you don't really get to pick that. Let's be honest here. Unless you're going to a small office or environment or company, you don't know how the company is going to operate. And the company might operate with certain values then, but a person doesn't. That's within the organization or a director or whatnot. So you don't have a lot of control in that. The main thing that guys really should take away too is you guys should love the business world when you get out, and you do, and you excel in it. Why? Because you realize that they're giving you free reins to make decisions. Yeah. Because just like on a team, what are you told? Okay, this is your end state, accomplish the mission no matter what changes. That's what businesses want you to do as well. Yeah. So I say to you guys all the time, you're all watching too many reruns of The Office. That is not what the business world looks like. Guys are always like, well, I don't want to sit in a cubicle in a tie. And I'm like, this isn't 1980s IBM. Like, it's just not the business world. So you'll enjoy it a lot more than you think.
No, that's a good point. As we kind of wrap up here, I want to give you a last kind of thought. Anything else you want to leave our guys, obviously from the SF side, but across all of SOF and those that might be listening, kind of your final thoughts, and then how they can find you, how can they get involved? If I'm in a group right now, how do I get in touch with you?
Sure. So there are so many things that I could cover. And the class that I do, as you saw, is 90 minutes to 2 hours because there's just so much to cover. But, to wrap things up, a couple of things I would say is, number one, know your worth.
Yeah.
You're worth more than you think. Two, I see a lot of guys get upset when they try and explain what makes them unique and somebody just doesn't want to listen or they don't understand. So I say all the time, I use this example, a cheetah uses its speed to hunt, not to prove to other animals that it's faster and stronger. So don't waste your time and energy proving your value to others who simply don't possess the skill set to understand your value and see your worth. It's not a good use of your time.
Yeah.
Also, make sure you're looking at finances. It's incredible how many people I sit with when I say, okay, if I could get you a job making X amount of dollars, does that work for you? And they say, I don't know. How do you not know? Do you know your finances? 50% of the time, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Personal finances is something that you've got to do a better job on. Now, many times guys will bring their wives when I sit with them one-on-one. They
Sure.
want her to hear the process. And so finances are super important. That's another thing that you have to really stay on top of. So, there's so much and I could go on all day just in terms of tips and tricks, but the main thing is fall back on your skills. Fall back on what makes you unique, who you are and what you do. Fall back on the people skills that you have. GBs are what? Force multipliers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you translate all of that into civilian skills, I've never once placed a guy, we're over 20 now, I think, GBs. One dev group guy I placed as well, who's a good friend, but mostly GBs. And I've never had an employer come back and say they didn't work out. In fact, after a couple of months, the employer comes back and goes, where did you get this guy?
Yeah.
They say things like, one, he never tries to come up with an excuse of why he needs a day off. When it comes to a meeting, he's always on time. He writes everything down. When I ask him, and this is very important, when I ask him a question in email, I get the proper length from a worded response. Most of my employees, give me 10 times what I need. Why? Because people think the more they talk, the smarter they sound. No, less is more. So these are some of the things that I go through one-on-one as far as how people can contact me. So we're recording this in September. The last week in September, I'll be at fifth group for an entire week doing classes, going back again. I was just there a few months ago. In October, last week, I'll be at third group. So I'll be there. And then seventh group, I'll be at for the second week in November. And then first 2 weeks in December, somewhere in that time frame, I'll be at first group. Yeah. So if all goes as planned in the last, for this year, actually, the 12 months, I'll hit all 5 operational groups at least once, plus SOCOM, plus some other areas. And I've sort of lost count at this point, just number of trips and every place I've been. But, if guys have questions, simple, call me. 917-523-4562. My phone number is, if you Google Dan Rayburn, and my phone number is right on my site. And again, you're not going to find anything I do with you guys publicly. This is the first time I've ever actually spoken about this publicly. So I appreciate you having me on. But I'm not like other orgs where it's like fill out a form and if you fit into a cycle 4 months from now, we'll talk to you.
Yeah.
If I'm not on the phone or in a meeting, I will pick up my phone the same day. I will talk to you.
No, it's awesome, man. And, again, like I said earlier, man, I really appreciate you coming on. As you and I talked, I want the opportunity. Yeah, it's cool to be able to listen to this podcast and get some of it, but really for guys that are out in the groups, if you're listening to this, I can't recommend it enough as far as not just getting that 90-minute class with Dan, but really having a chance to sit down with him one-on-one afterwards and really talk your individual kind of needs, your thoughts, where you want to go, where you think you want to go, and having a guy who's done it before and knows what he's talking about, but also understands some of our community's kind of tweaks and kind of eccentricities, I guess I would say, is super valuable.
I call it what makes you unique.
Yeah, there you go. That sounds better.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, on behalf of us all here at SOCOM, thanks for listening, thanks for coming on the podcast today. Really appreciate it. Good chance to talk to you again. And thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the privilege and opportunity to be able to talk to everyone today.
Yeah, thanks again on behalf of the regiment, man. All the time and effort and everything that you've put into it really does mean something to our community. So we couldn't be more thankful. And for all of you out there listening, thanks for listening to another episode of Softcast. We're super excited to be in season 4 now. We hope that you're already following US SOCOM on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn. But if you're not, go check it out. And wherever you're listening to this, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, whatever, go down and make sure you subscribe, but also make sure you go ahead and give us a rating or a review. And especially for this type of episode, if you know somebody in your team or in your organization that's transitioning right now, or you think that could get some value out of this conversation, send them a link. Let them know to take a chance and listen to this. And again, if you've got a topic you want to hear, you got somebody you think we should talk to, email us, softcast@socom.mil, and we'd be happy to get your feedback. So on behalf of all of us here at SOCOM, thanks for listening to another episode of Softcast.